Welcome, viewers, to this episode of Conversation with Faisal Rashid. Our guest today is Mr. Lyn Hall, the Mayor of City of Prince George. Welcome, Mr. Hall, to the program.
Well, thanks very much. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
Excellent. So, you have been a community member in Prince George for more than 3 decades. What are the best things you like about the city of Prince George?
Well, Prince George was a city that I came to quite often as a young child. I grew up in Dawson Creek, and of course, we had a lot of relatives in Prince George, and I was really taken by it even then. And even as a young person in high school, we made a lot of trips over here to play sports, and made a lot of trips over to Prince George to play hockey. And then when I finally did settle here about 35 years ago, it really I think what it boils down to is the people. Uh, the people are fantastic, and it's really a number of things that really make the community what it is. And it's the lifestyle, it's the recreational opportunities. Our family is very involved from a recreation perspective, a sports perspective, and as I said, we have lots of family here, and so I think for me, it's Faisal, it's the people, it's the lifestyle, and just the opportunities that Prince George presents. And it's a nice size. I always thought that if I was going to move away from Dawson, that it had to be a community that wasn't a large metropolis, a large city, and Prince George just fit the bill.
Thank you. And please tell us a little more about the modern history of Prince George.
Yeah, it's interesting because the modern history of Prince George is really cemented in its entire history, even from 100 years ago. And we just did have, not just, but in 2015 had our 100th birthday. And Prince George today is really, I think, become obviously a bigger city. Our population has grown. We're still a resource city from a forest perspective and other resources. But it's really moved into a technology city. It's really moved into a city that provides exceptional education. So we have the University of Northern British Columbia, the College of New Caledonia, School District 57, the University of Northern BC Hospital, which provides services to the entire region. And I think that's a really strong component to what makes Prince George that modern day city, if you will. And it's important, I think, for Prince George, because of our geographical location. We are really servicing a large area, and we're very proud of that. We're proud to be really that localized center because of our size, because of our geographical location, to help others out. So the city has changed drastically over the years, but I think we've still maintained that same core, beliefs and the same real, I think, down to earth attitude.
Great. And how do you consider Northern British Columbia to be such a beautiful and unique place?
Well, it is, and as I said, I grew up in the north and ventured away to go to university, but always was drawn back for a number of reasons. And I think, just as you've mentioned, it's a beautiful region. I think one of the most beautiful regions in the entire province, and the amenities that we have to recreate, and quite honestly, whether you like to water ski, snowmobile, downhill ski, board, whatever it is that you like to do, it's all offered here in this region. And comment on Haida Gwaii, for example, the Fort Nelson area. Every area of our region has something different to offer individuals. And I have family in various parts of the region, and that's what they comment all the time, is just the different opportunities that they have.
And what encouraged you to join regional politics?
Well, it's funny. I think that I've always had a bit of interest, and it started with a bit of interest early on when I was in high school, and really participating in some of the events that were going on in our high school, both junior high and our senior high, and getting involved with the student councils. And then I went away to university, became involved with the residence council at university, And I think that just really started to really lay the groundwork for my greater interest in government, in municipal politics, federal politics, provincial. And I think from a community involvement perspective, which is really, I think, can lead into, and in my case, did lead into a political life, is my parents. My parents were very active in the community at a number of levels. My mom was an active volunteer for the hospital auxiliary. And my dad sat on a number of organizations, nonprofit organizations in Dawson Creek. And I think that just prompted me. And when I moved to Prince George, I got involved with the Child Development Center and the ringette and soccer organizations. And I just had a real desire to get involved that way. And of course, one thing led to another, and conversations started about, have you considered running for the school board? Have you considered running for council? And that was really my first elected official position was in 2001 with School District 57 as a trustee.
And what does civic leadership mean to you?
You know, it's interesting because it's an interesting question. And I think for me, it is really about, it's about strong leadership. It's about being able to really, at the end of the day, be approachable, if you will, Faisal. And it's about understanding the complexity of a community. It's about understanding the demographics of a community, and understanding, obviously, the issues that are happening in your city. And those issues can change drastically. They can change from day to day, and it's how you react to those issues. So there's a number of components, I think, that really fall into that category and the question that you've asked. And it's a commitment. All along, the commitment is really about doing the best job you can. And it's, in my case, as mayor of Prince George, it's also about, the council that's around you, because this is really a team effort. So it's got a lot of components to it, but I think if I were to boil it down to one, it's just really that strong leadership and understanding the complexities and issues in your community.
Thank you, sir. And please tell us a little more about your present community service roles.
Yeah, so presently I sit on the Prince George Community Foundation, and as mayor, I'm appointed to a couple of other organizations that I work with. So I'm on the regional district, the Fraser Fort George Regional District, and my wife and I are still very active in the community. The Salvation Army Kettle Campaign, for example, is something that we participate in each year, and belong to a couple of organizations that, really sporting organizations were big for me. As I said, I was involved in the Prince George Youth Soccer Association, involved in Prince George Ringette. So there's really been a foundation of recreation and sports, I guess, as I was, when I first came to Prince George, that was really the things that I did. But my years on the Child Development Center really give me a great perspective on our community. The Child Development Center does fantastic work, as do all the other nonprofit organizations in the city.
Thank you for explaining. And what are some major projects being supported by the city of Prince George nowadays?
Yeah, so we've had a few projects that we've really taken on, and necessary projects, Faisal, I'll say, is we went to referendum a few years ago for a new fire hall #1 and a new pool. Our Four Seasons pool downtown was aging, and so we went to referendum, and the referendum passed on both those projects. So our new fire hall is now up and running. And it's state of the art, and it was something that was badly needed here in the city. We have four major fire halls, but fire hall #1 is the main hall. The new pool, as I look out my window, I can see the new construction. We're probably about 8 or 10 months away from that, the new pool opening up in downtown Prince George. So those are two major facilities that were really warranted and needed here in the city. But we have a lot of other infrastructure projects going on, and infrastructure projects that you don't see. Underground infrastructure was important. We have an aging infrastructure like every other community, and we have a number of projects that are underground. So you see a little bit of the construction and that kind of work when we start our project. And then before you know it, we've got pavement over it. But that infrastructure project is so important to our city as well. So it's not always the ones that you see, the tangible ones. It's the ones that you don't see that are important as well. And we continue to just upgrade our facilities as much as possible, and that will continue as it does in every other community for years to come.
Thank you, sir. And congratulations, in fall of 2021, UNBC has again been ranked as the top university in its category. How do you feel about it?
Well, I'm extremely proud and excited about that, and you're absolutely right, Faisal, that it has been a few years that we've received that number one ranking in their category. You know what UNBC has really done for us is it has turned us into a different city. Once we got the university, we started to, I think, really take a leap forward in what our city was all about and what people knew about our city. Having a university here brings students from potentially all over Canada, potentially all over the world. And we do have a large international student body, both at UNBC and at CNC. So it really did change the face of our community. We have a medical program now, and it was just a chance, I think, for us now when we go out to promote the city and say that we have University of Northern British Columbia right here. I think that is really an add-on to what we're trying to do to attract people to Prince George. And it has brought a tremendous amount of professional people to Prince George, people who are professors at the university, people who are also working at the University of Northern British Columbia, doctors and physiotherapists and technicians. So it's really, I think, broadened the horizon of our city.
That's wonderful. And how can we attract businesses and investors more, in your opinion, to the northern communities?
You know, Faisal, it's an overused phrase, and many times you hear that a city is open for business. And I've had people say to me, "Well, yes, obviously you're open for business, but you need to advertise it." And it's a good question. And for me, it's about how do we attract investment and developers to consider Prince George and to consider the North. There's huge opportunity here, and we're seeing it in all sectors. And I will talk just specifically about Prince George and some of the things that we're doing. We have a Move Up Prince George program, and that is nationwide, where the program comes out of our Economic Development Office, and it really highlights Prince George from a job opportunity, investment opportunity, to a lifestyle opportunity. And that has really garnered a tremendous amount of attention for us. And I think we really need to continue to be proactive. And the proactiveness of attracting investment and development to a community or to the North is really based on each individual community. We work very, very hard in promoting our community. And like I've always said, we want investors and developers to consider us. We want to be on that list of consideration. And if we're on that list of consideration, and I will broaden that to the entire region, if we're on the list of consideration for investment and development, we are going to get people coming to our communities, coming to the region to make those investments. And I think it's really the responsible thing is for each one of us to obviously represent our city, promote our cities, but to show the attributes of the region. It's an important piece of this.
Thank you. And unfortunately, we see higher crime rates and homelessness in northern communities. How do you think we can try to reduce it?
You just have hit on a very complex issue. It involves homelessness. It involves people with an opioid addiction, mental illness, and then you have the crime piece embedded in there. And what it takes is all levels of government. It takes federal, provincial, municipal governments to and I know, again, we always talk about partnerships, but it is a partnership. We have to be on the same page in the delivery of things like uh, housing. We work very closely with BC Housing. There's a necessity for us to work very closely, and we do, with our health authorities, because it encompasses so many issues, Faisal, that if you don't have that connection to those partners, you're not going to be able to come up with solutions. You're not going to be able to come up with, uh, I think, a path forward. And recently we've been talking about complex care. And we here in Prince George have a great partnership with BC Housing and Northern Health Authority on an integrated health model, where in fact it'll provide housing and health services to people who are suffering from either mental illness or drug addiction. And it's encompassed in one location. We're very proud of it. And we're working diligently. Construction had started a few months ago. So we're excited about that kind of project. And I don't think I can stress too strongly that the RCMP are at that table as well with us as a partner. So it's just encompassing the entire spectrum of organizations that can help with this issue. And I don't know, there's not one single solution. And perhaps a solution that you have in place today is not going to work a week or 10 days from now. And I belong to a group of mayors throughout the province, and that's one of our key focus, is how do we work on these social issues, if you will, that are impacting our communities.
And how do you think we can all contribute sincerely for truth and reconciliation?
Well, for me, it's really a learning journey, and we have a great relationship with our First Nations community, the Lheidli here in Prince George. And it's about, as I said, a learning journey for me, and I think for many others. And I think it's striking a strong partnership. It's striking the ability to have good conversations about reconciliation. What does reconciliation mean, not just throughout the province or the country, but what does it mean in our community? And how can we work closely with First Nations organizations uh, to be able to work towards reconciliation? And just recently, and a very unfortunate situation in Kamloops, where there were 215 graves that were identified. We and Lheidli held a ceremony in front of City Hall, and I think that, again, I go back to the fact that that's a learning journey for me. And the more that you can learn about reconciliation, the more that you can work with First Nations, I think that's the key to it.
Thank you, sir. Absolutely. We are all in this together. And a little more about government. So please comment on the famous quote of Martin Luther King: democracy transformed from thin paper to thick action is the greatest form of government on earth.
Yeah, isn't that an interesting quote, Faisal? It's funny that you should ask that, because I'm of the age where I can kind of remember the Martin Luther King days and watching what was going on TV on CBC, and it really, for me, is when you talk about thick action, you talk about democracy, and for me, it absolutely, at the end of the day, it just provides endless opportunities. And the message in that quote is about the thin paper, is maybe where you have the commitment on paper, but how do you translate that into action? And that is the key. And when I talk about endless opportunities, I think that quote really talks about going from paper to action, and the investment that you need to make, the commitment you need to make to the action. And so, yeah, a very, very powerful quote.
As I've revived some memories, then I'll ask you about another quote of John F. Kennedy. Please comment on that. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country?
You've come up with two fantastic quotes that are embedded in history and will be forever. Uh, it really for me solidifies the fact that as mayor and over the years as a council member and on the school board, it was always about, and I said that earlier when you talked about sort of how I got into politics, and it is about what you can do and what you can do for your community. I think that's why we get into working as volunteers, working in nonprofit organizations. It's about what you can do for your community. And really, when I joined the Child Development Center, and that's a good example for me, it was, in fact, I felt I had some things to offer the Child Development Center, and I wanted to be a part of the board, and just I thought so much of the organization, and I wanted to give back to the organization just as an individual. So, and that really hasn't changed much in everything I commit to do. When I commit to participate in a nonprofit organization, a volunteering role, uh, it's not about what they can do for me. I'm just focused on what is it that I can deliver to them that is of some significance and helps the organization in some way. So I think that I've heard that quote a lot over the last number of years. So it is interesting to me that that absolutely should be the focus when you want to get into public life or when you want to participate as a volunteer. And it is. I'm convinced that when people do that, it's about what they feel they can provide to the organization that they're involved with.
Absolutely, sir. That's about building the community. And would you like to tell us about your favorite book and the idea?
Yeah, it's a book I haven't read yet, and I'm excited to read it. And I think it's a Peter Mansbridge book, Off the Record. And yeah, I'm excited to get it. I put it on my Christmas wish list, Faisal. So I hope Santa Claus brings it to me, and I think it'll be a good read. And for me, it's about over the last number of years, have really become more interested uh, in political, historical books, autobiographies of various politicians throughout the years. That's sort of been my interest over the last few years. I don't get an opportunity to read very much because I'm so busy, but that's sort of where my reading has taken me over the last while.
Thank you, sir. And if I ask you, sir, what would be your message as a member of the global community?
Well, I would bring that message directly to home and to our province. Since 2017, we've seen drastic wildfires impact many parts, if not all parts of our province, with the decimation of a community, with people who have ended up without homes as a result of the wildfires. Now we're seeing the drastic floods that are taking place at the coast and through the Coquihalla and Hope areas, through the Duffy Lake area. And it is just tragic to see these things happening. You see them unfolding on newscasts. You see the impact it's having on families, on entire communities. And I guess my message in seeing all of this since 2017, Faisal, would be that each one of us can play a role. Each one of us can stand up and help our neighbor. Each one of us can just reach out. And maybe that reaching out is just to see how people are doing. If you have family members that are living in these areas that are impacted by these conditions, just reach out, obviously, and see how they're doing. And that's really what it takes. If you have this, even the opportunity to help out in more ways than just that phone call. It may be that you can participate, as I saw 200 or 300 people sandbagging in Abbotsford. Just the community has come together so greatly, and I think those of us that are living in the north, it's just a support role. And just recently, I've talked to a couple of mayors in the Lower Mainland and just provided our support. That's all. That's all that I think sometimes we can do. is just provide the support, the verbal support, and say, we're thinking about you. And if there's anything we can do, reach out to us. And that's an important piece. Very, very important right now.
Thank you, sir, for your sentiments and for your services. Obviously, as members of the community, we are all supposed to help each other. And thank you, viewers, also. In our next future episodes, we will be back with more guests from the regional community and from the global community. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you very much, Faisal. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
You too.